Well, hi everyone who's watching, and welcome. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to our distinguished panel. We have with us Gail Hamilton, who is a faculty in History and Social Sciences in our College of Education. We have Nat Hansuvada with us, who is the coordinator of our Masters in Special Education, among other things. We have Jonathan O'Brien, Law, Leadership and Management, advising adult learners. I'm looking forward to learning all about that. Lidiana Portales-Blair, who is a lecturer in liberal studies and also very involved in our urban dual credential program. And Stacey Griffin, who's a lecturer in teacher ed and a very practiced curriculum developer. So really interesting panelists. Thanks for joining us and taking the time. And let's get started. So I'm going to work sort of just the way my little rectangles are arranged on my computer. We know how that works. But Nat, how did you get to come to Cal State Long Beach?
I am a former CSU grad. I actually went to Cal State LA for my teaching credential and my master's in special education. So I had incredible mentorship while I was there and I really loved it. So after I finished my PhD program, I knew I wanted to return to SoCal. And I had been doing teacher preparation during my doctoral program. And when I interviewed at Cal State Long Beach, I loved everyone I worked with. The students and the faculty were just so dynamic, and I'm so grateful I made that choice. My gut was just telling me Long Beach. So yeah, 15 years later, I'm still here. So
fantastic. It certainly is a great institution, Cal State Long Beach. And may I add that the College of Education is one of our shining stars. So we're grateful that you chose us. How about you, Jonathan?
Well, I'm actually a double alum. I graduated in the mid-'80s with an undergraduate in English literature. And, there wasn't a lot of work for English lit majors even then. So I ended up going into a student affairs program, management program. And so I went to the most exotic place I could think of after LA, which was Warrensburg, Missouri. It's the middle of nowhere.
That's definitely up there for exotic. I'll give you that.
More cows than people, and it was the mascot was the mule and the jenny. I didn't know that a jenny is a female mule, but anyway, that was it. But I was there. I worked in the Midwest for about 5 years. I worked in Kentucky. I worked in Indiana. Then I came back to Los Angeles, and I eventually ended up assistant dean of students at Loyola Marymount University. And then I moved over to Occidental College. My position there was the dean of students, effectively. I mean, the dean was a vice president's title, but I was the one that managed the division pretty much. And after that, I came to Cal State Long Beach. I was a full-time lecturer starting in 2009. And I was the coordinator of the Student Development and Higher Education Master's Program, which prepares people to be counselors in community colleges or administrators in post-secondary ed. And then eventually our EDD program came. And so I said I was a double alum because after I got that master's degree in Missouri, I got an EDD here at Cal State Long Beach, but it was back when there was a joint program between UC Irvine and this program. And so I graduated there, and very excited to say that I was awarded tenure last summer. And so I now have associate professor and tenure. And I'm just really excited to be here. I love Cal State Long Beach.
Congratulations. We're happy to have you here. So that's great. How about you, Lidiana?
Hi, so I also was in the EDD program here at Cal State Long Beach. And so that's what originally brought me to Cal State Long Beach. I was, my background is as an elementary school teacher. I taught 4th, 5th grade. Then later on, I was a curriculum specialist and instructional coach. Started doing the EDD program and never really had any intention of going into higher ed. But as I was finishing my dissertation, the UDCP program was launching, and it very much spoke to me. I knew why that program was so necessary. I mean, working with so many beginning teachers, myself, having been once lost my first year teaching, I knew how important it was to be able to meet the needs of all the students that come through our doors. And so at first they said, thank you, but no thank you. I was really happy where I was. I saw my future in K-12. But a little voice kind of said, stop and reconsider this. And I'm so glad I listened to that small voice. I already knew I was going to love working at Cal State Long Beach. As a student, I have been really impressed with how dedicated professors were. In fact, that's actually where I met some of these people for the first time. I love how forward-thinking the vision of the university was. And I'm always so glad I listened to that voice and made that jump, because it's been extremely rewarding.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, it's interesting because Matt and you both heard a still small voice, if I can be a biblical quota, and that voice, that gut, whatever it was, told you to do the right thing. I too have had very much good luck with listening to my gut, and so it's interesting. Stacey, how about you?
A bit of a different story.
Great. We love difference.
I was an elementary school teacher and literacy coach at Pattison, which is in the Little Lake City School District. And Dr. Paul Boyd Batstone was teaching a class on that campus. So I hosted his student teachers, and I guess positive words got out, because the next thing I knew, he had all of his students in my class observing. And for the rest of that year, he invited me in as a guest speaker to his classes, both in Little Lake and on campus. And the following year, I got a job teaching the same course, and I have been teaching that course and others since 2006.
How fantastic. Well, how great. That's terrific to have you here. And Gail, how about you?
Similar to everyone else, I have been a product of CSULB in some ways. I got my undergraduate degree here, had a career in private industry. After 9/11, decided I wanted to do something meaningful, was able to come back, get my teaching credential, was a middle school teacher for 15 years. And then during that time, I teach history, and met contact with the history department and the single subject. And then about 7 years ago was brought on to teach part-time while I was still teaching at Long Beach Unified. And then I'm just finishing up my second year of full-time being a lecturer here at CSULB, and have been really loving it. I work with the single subject program.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, certainly, I'll take the chance to plug our history department, because it is a great department and filled with impressive people. So of course you're as part of that. Well, in the last couple of, I suppose, 12 months, 13 months or something, we've all faced this global pandemic. And one of the things that just amazes me as provost is how successfully you all, the faculty of this university, have kind of turned things on a dime and suddenly been able to develop instruction that works for our students. And I'm just dying to hear from you. What was surprising for you? What kind of did you discover about yourselves, about your teaching, about pedagogy, about our students? Let's go in reverse order. Gail, what about you?
I realized I had to be purposeful, clear, and flexible. And I thought I had those qualities when we started, but I realized how much I had relied on in-person cues that I no longer could get when we went to AMI. And so I had to start building in specific points where I would check in with the students on their mental well-being, and put in checks for understanding for what I expected them to learn. So it was an eye-opening experience. And then the university has been super supportive in the various kinds of workshops and trainings that we could go to build upon the skills that we needed.
Well, great. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, I'm delighted to hear that it's been, successful for you, College of Education experts in pedagogy and curriculum design and so on. So if you got something out of those, I'm really happy. to hear that. So it's absolutely true, isn't it? I too have come to realize how much I rely on bodily cues and just being there, seeing people's language, are they bored? Are they listening to me? And usually the answer is no. But I mean, but in our little rectangles, very, very much more purposeful. So great word. Stacey, how about you?
Again, my response will be different than my colleagues. In 2012, I piloted the first asynchronous language arts methods course for the teacher education department. It was the focus of my dissertation, which was cognitive and social constructivism in the asynchronous learning environment. So I have been using AMI for almost a decade now. Wow. However, what I have learned during COVID is how critical social and emotional support is for our students' success. So I have amped up the weekly emails, the informal forums, such as my cyber cafe, giving them constant access to resources, which the college provides an abundance of on-campus and off-campus resources. I think that creating a culture of community is now more important than ever. And I really feel, because we all been put in this situation, I've been working harder to build that community, and my students have been so responsive. And honestly, after almost a decade of teaching asynchronously, this past year has been my favorite. It has been my warmest because of how close I have become to my students socially.
That's so interesting. I mean, just to respond, I've always thought that education is about relationships. What relationships can the learner and the instructor develop? And we're so used to building relationships face to face or in person. It's been, for me at any rate, a very quick way of, can I sustain, can I build, can I initiate relationships via this medium? And to my delight, I found, like you, Stacey, that I can, maybe not as successfully or in a different way, but it's still the basics for learning. So fascinating. How about you?
What I'll tell you that's interesting is that when my students see this video, it will be the first time they've ever seen what I look like.
Okay, well, I'm sure it will only deepen the relationship. So, Lydiana, how about you?
I really that all resonates with me. I was going to say that when we all went virtual, the thing that stressed me out the most was that our student teachers were in the middle of doing their Cal TPAs, which is this big performance assessment where they have to video record themselves teaching in the classroom and show all the elements of good teaching. And I thought, how in the world are they going to be able to do that? And how are we going to make sure that our student teachers are able to graduate with their credential and still learn all the things they need to learn? And I got to say, they were so resilient. They were so creative. We had a lot of good discussions where we went out, we looked at resources. They brought resources for us to all look at. They taught me a great deal about technology that's out there. And they were still able to go out and create lessons that were engaging, included a lot of peer engagement and collaboration, had rigorous assessments, and they taught me that all the tenets of good teaching could still happen in the virtual environment. And they just did a fantastic job. And they even worked double time to contact parents and translate things in different languages to make sure that everyone was going to get through this together. So I think it should not have surprised me, because I know that teachers, we do whatever it takes to get the job done and help kids learn. But it was really inspiring to see all of that.
I think so. And I mean, I think it's always inspiring for me, as a teacher to see young teachers coming into their own and developing their skills under your incredible guidance and leadership. And it's, you know, it's difficult for me to imagine a more important job than teaching. And, you know, how do we transmit our cultural values to the next generation? Well, it's all of us doing it. And when I hear you and see you, I know that the future's in good hands. So, gosh, what an optimistic time. Jonathan, how about you?
Well, you know, as somebody who studies ethical leadership in organizations, particularly in education, one of the things that really both impressed me and then also really made me quite humble was one, the way that the big bus of education, like as an institution, turned, as you said, on a dime earlier when you introduced this. I mean, that just shocked me. But what it also revealed during this time was an incredible amount of inequity, like technological inequity, but racial inequity. And I know that's not something surprising in terms of wonderful, but it was very revealing for me personally, and I know for a lot of my colleagues, in terms of really bringing to the fore folks who needed our food pantry. You know, the ASI continued to run that food pantry, right? Even when we couldn't get out, or students getting laptops. And I was so impressed at how also our big bus of education responded pretty well to trying to help, you know, at least ameliorate some of the gaps in people's experience. Students didn't turn on their backgrounds because maybe they either were on a phone or, you know, were in their car because they were trying to get good Wi-Fi. I realized how sheltered and privileged I actually am. And the luxury that I had to be able to sit in my home and, you know, work off of a laptop while other folks had to go out and deliver for DoorDash while they were taking classes. And so I guess what it really revealed, and what I would hope would change in the future, is just that we really never forget that, and that we continue to try to work to alleviate these disparities.
You know, I think it's really worth accentuating that these discussions, the issue that you raised is so critical, and even though many people believe it's political, you know, the inequities in our society are stark and obvious and need to be addressed. We as educators can do some of that. In fact, we can do a large part in helping, but we need the help of other members of our community, of our society. And I think we see that, you know, reinvestment perhaps of finances in education writ large, K through 20, infrastructure, other investments in our social fabric, sorely needed. So yes, one must keep in the front of one's mind how I guess how serious a job we are doing, and thank you for bringing it up, Jonathan. It's good to remember. Nat, how about you?
I loved all of my colleagues' comments. I agree wholeheartedly with all of you. I would share a lot of that. I'd say, as far as surprises for me, I went into like super mama bear mode when we, you know, abruptly shifted to, you know, teaching online. And I teach graduate students. So my students are current special education teachers, teaching anywhere from elementary students with mild disabilities to high school students with more moderate severe disabilities. I also teach behavior therapists. So really, I learned so much more from them than I think they did, you know, from me, and just seeing like how they continually had to pivot from all of a sudden teaching virtually, you know, synchronously. And so many of them now are just going back to the classroom with only like a month and a half left of instruction, or, you know, dealing with, you know, students not showing up to class virtually and trying to motivate their students and trying to support those students' families around those equity issues Jonathan was raising, while at the same time they're trying to manage, you know, a lot of them are half of my cohort, you know, they're moms. So their young kids are learning at home. So they're parenting full-time while teaching full-time. and going to grad school full time. And so, you know, we just really leaned on each other through this cohort. And, you know, like you said, teaching is so relational. And because of this past year, it's really brought us, you know, closer together. And I'm just so thankful for that.
I hope it has. And I think you may have sort of got the phrase of the podcast there, super mama bear mode, I think is a memorable phrase, which we'll take with us. And I can only smile and enjoy that. We've talked a lot, we've talked a little bit about you know, responsive pedagogy. You've talked about how things have changed or not changed, Stacey, even if they've developed and grown. But as educators, as leaders in the College of Education, what advice would you have for our students, some of whom may be watching this? What kind of words of wisdom do you have for our students? And I know that's a big question, so, you know, but I'm sure you have them. So let's mix it up and go to, I'm doing the horrible math teacher example, you know, picking on you, but how about you, Lydiana? Okay, Jonathan, you're doing the typical response, right?
Right. So, I mean, I would say that as far as advice to students, you know, they have shown so much resilience through this entire process. And that is something that for the rest of their life, they're going to be able to call back on as a time that they showed great strength under a great amount of pressure. And yeah, I've seen our students persevere through so many things. I know that there was some students, like you said, went out and got their second job because their families lost their jobs, or when their nieces and nephews' schools closed down, they provided the babysitting so that their family could continue working. Or, you know, I knew that if they were in class with me, right next to them was a younger sibling doing their schooling. And so they just continued persevering through all of this. And you know, teaching's a tough road. It is it's mind, body, and soul. You have to invest it all. And they're going to be able to look back on this really difficult time and pull that source of inspiration. You know, because as I told them in the beginning, you know, you are the only cohort of teachers ever that has had to, on a dime, go to virtual teaching. This has never been done before. And it's even brand new for your veteran teachers who are helping you in the classroom. And now here you are helping them. And so no matter what challenges teaching throws at you in the future, you're going to be able to look back and say, hey, I persevered through that. I can get through anything.
Mm-hmm. No, it's so, what you say resonates so much with me. I mean, I even though I'm, you know, old as the hills, I'm not old enough to have lived through, say, the Second World War or something like that. Some massive effort by the whole of society to make some big changes. And, you know, they called that generation the Great Generation or the Greatest Generation because they were able to pull together, come together, make it work in really tough circumstances. And I've always wondered, how would I have reacted? I still don't know how I would have reacted, but I know how our students have reacted, and I would now call them the greatest generation of the 21st century because of precisely those reasons. So thanks, Lydiana. How about you, Gail? I mean, what advice would you have for us?
You know, Lydiana has been channeling all the same ideas that I've been thinking, and I made some notes about what it was. And I agree, the students have shown great resilience. I was thinking there's one student who ended up having an emergency appendectomy last spring after we'd gone to distance learning. And he'd emailed me like, I'm going to the hospital. And I told him, don't worry, you know, it's fine. Anyway, so we're logging into Zoom and I noticed there he is as a tile. And I'm like, he logged, you know, so like, even though I gave him the, you know, option that obviously this isn't a medical emergency, don't come to class, but he did. and it was just one of those things that was one of many, many examples of students that were going through really horrific challenges, but they brought grace to it. They brought compassion. I remember them being considerate of me, especially in the beginning when this was first going and we weren't really sure what was going to happen. So considerate and compassionate towards their classmates and myself, and creative. And so what my advice is that they've shown all this through what is probably a once in a lifetime catastrophic event, hopefully once in a lifetime. They can put all those things, and whatever their dreams are, they will be able to achieve them with the same kind of grit and compassion that they have shown through this. So I know things might seem really dire for them right now, but I think that they have so many options, and I am super encouraged about our future because of what they've shown through this.
Fabulous. I like your 3 C's of considerate, compassionate. So thank you for that. And also just to point out that what a testament to you, Gail, that your student in the middle of an appendectomy was wanting to come to class. So congratulations. That's the 4th C. Jonathan, advice.
Yeah, I would say the corollary to being resilient and being strong for other people is sometimes that you don't ask for help. So I would say ask for help when you need it. And that requires a lot of vulnerability on their part. And I've seen my students be so strong for all the people in their lives because they have to. And that's a great thing. But then there are limitations to that. And it can really add up in terms of the anxiety and the stress involved. And so reaching out, I think, is really just making that okay. And I think people have. I've seen that happen a lot more.
Oh, good.
But, just really normalizing that. And so sometimes I will ask them for help, but in ways that are really more personal than just, hey, get your homework on time so I don't have to grade. It's more like, I need your help. I went through personally some pretty deep losses in my family in the last year. And I asked them for help. I said, I need you to be able to, contribute to class and kind of take on some of the lecturing and things like that in terms of engaging with each other. And they really did a wonderful job. So modeling that, and then also telling them it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly sorry to hear about your personal losses, Jonathan, and my condolences, and also very impressed with your students for responding to your excellent modeling of that vulnerability, reaching out, which is part of education. Where that old model, if it ever existed, of the teacher as the sage on the stage type of thing was never very effective, and certainly not now. Stacy, how about you?
Students, my advice for you is just breathe. What we are all experiencing is a small moment in time. Although it may not feel like that right now, it will pass. These may be challenging times, and it might be hard to see the big picture, but the big picture exists. And remember that these are unprecedented times, so grant yourself grace. Grace. And remember that you are not alone. As Jonathan mentioned so eloquently, you have a support system. You have peers and course facilitators who genuinely care for you. We care for your emotional health. We care for your social health. We care for your academic success. And if you feel disheartened, reach out. We are here and we're not going anywhere. And that's my advice for students. Just breathe.
It's absolutely brilliant. I can't say anything else other than listen to Stacy. Well done. Nat, how about you? Sorry to kind of put you after that very eloquent and brilliant statement, but I'm sure you too have wisdom to impart.
Yeah, I think, I've told my students, and I think Jonathan also touched upon it, just it's okay to cry, it's okay to grieve, and to do that with us, and that you can experience both grief and joy simultaneously, and don't ever apologize for crying. Don't ever apologize for breaking down and for being this authentic human being who is experiencing, deep pain and fears around what's going on and not knowing, where the end is in sight. So again, the more that, we can really model that and have those open, safe spaces and build that trusted community, I think students, they need that. And they feel a sense of trust and safety when we give space to acknowledge, what emotions are surfacing for them. Because it's only a matter of time before it comes to the surface and you see it come out in different ways. So that would be my advice.
Well, I love it because, I mean, we are all whole people, minds and bodies and spirit and emotions are part of us, and they're part of learning, they're part of life. So hiding them away is not a good strategy. So by all means, indeed, cry, laugh, enjoy, because actually life is short, and it's a great privilege to be here. By the way, while you were talking, Gail, you might enjoy this. I sort of said, who actually said? I typed into my phone. Who said this too shall pass? An interesting historical thing. I didn't know this. I'll read it. It was employed in a speech by Abraham Lincoln before he became the 16th president. And here's the quote. It is said an Eastern monarch once charged his wise men to invent him a sentence to be ever in view and which should be true and appropriate in all times and situations. They presented him the words, and this too shall pass away.
Excellent.
So, well, anyway, who knew? Well, of course, it may be true, but given that I found it on Google, but fascinating to hear. It is. Okay, good. All right, we've confirmed it with an authority, so we're good to know. Wow, that's amazing. What advice would you have for me and maybe even the new provost as they come in to take over? What advice would you have for the university? Not so much for the pandemic, but where do you think we're going? What's the post-pandemic university going to look like from your perspective? Stacey?
Well, I believe that out of challenge can come change, and I'm optimistic. I think that people in positions of power especially need to be intentional and considerate of how individual students learn best, what resources and supports are needed, and we really need to reevaluate assessment practices. There's a fundamental difference between telling, testing, and teaching. And the focus, the paradigm must shift back to the latter. So I'm drawn to the pedagogical approaches of constructivism, collaboration, integration, reflection, and inquiry-based learning. And I hope that that becomes our intention to move more toward authentic teaching and learning and placing less value on a test score.
From your lips to God's ear. Stacey, how about you, Gail?
Well, I admired how our university has tried to be open about the process, and I supervise student teachers, and I see many of them, their districts are trying to turn on a dime. And I feel like we made the shift, but we haven't been trying to respond to every single week a new direction. And I'd like that intentionality about it. But I am hoping that we are going to take the best of what we discovered, like this more inquiry based. I think we're trying to do that and less reliant on tests because of the challenges of AMI, but also incorporate continuing building a community on campus that will incorporate many more, physical face-to-face activities, and that we don't try to change too many to become online classes only, because I really think that our students who only take online classes don't get the full advantage of everything that our university has to offer. So I'm hoping that we are going to continue to repopulate as quickly and safely as possible.
Goes back to the Greeks, right? The golden mean that yes, there's no doubt some benefit in online, but we don't want to go all the way. And if we can take what's good from that and incorporate it into our general offerings, it probably will improve things. So I'm with you there. Jonathan?
Well, a slightly different tact is I would hope that we can sustain dialogue. So in many spaces in corners of our university, we're doing things like intergroup dialogue, or we're engaging at least in discussions about, about equity. And what I would hope is that now that we have our plan, our plan for 2030, and we went through the process of doing some values surfacing and things like that. Like, let's try to sustain that. And you don't do that in a thin kind of litigious way or a policy-based way alone. Like, policy is one thing, but you've got informal ways in which people engage with each other. And I guess for me, it's like, I want us to be, and I know there's a kind of a phobia against using the word moral, but I don't want it to be the judgment way. I want it to be the way that we see ourselves as a moral community, and not that we're trying to unify under a certain set of values, but more that we each have our own, in our groups and as individuals, different things to contribute. And I guess, when we speak of justice, that we really try to pursue that, but everybody has versions of justice that I think that we all in the end are there because we know that we want to learn, we want to be better people, we want to grow and develop. And that just requires sustained conversations, and that's hard work, but that's the only way to do it. So I would hope through different organizations and in different ways, we can do things like these dialogues or have these conversations like we're doing now, and we'll engage each other, and on a moral plane.
Oh, I agree completely. And, I think, isn't that what a university is? A community of scholars. And of course, the scholars start from the beginning and they go all the way up to the president. But we're a community of scholars, and community, I think, is the key word there. We definitely can do that. And, this is one of the things, to Gail's point, this might be one of the ways that we can use technology to make it easier for us to communicate. It's sort of a bit ironic, but it's often very difficult to get face-to-face meetings with people. People are busy scheduled, but oddly enough, it seems somewhat easier to do it this way. So
it's almost like, I want to stress that, like, we can remove, in the time that we now realize we don't need to fill out forms or meet for unnecessary reasons, why don't we use that time to now engage each other just for the purposes of engaging each other and trying to understand each other?
Precisely. I need to add no more other than to go to Lydiana and say, your advice for the university.
I think that, it's a little bit hard to say, but I think that, as a lot of people have brought up, this time period has brought up a lot of inequities and just how different our students' lives are. And for some students, this past year has been a real struggle financially. And so what I think a lot as, we prepare future teachers is how expensive it is to become a teacher. They have to pass 4 exams to just get that preliminary credential. And altogether, it's a little bit under $900 in testing fees. And so it is just such a high barrier, and working with our students who are working so hard and being so resilient, it's really tough to know that sometimes just paying for a testing fee is a barrier to having them reach their dreams. So, any way that we can continue that conversation to remove some of those financial barriers so that we get these really passionate future teachers into the classroom and doing good.
You touch on such an interesting point, which is, fees in this case, but in general, inequities. And that the Biden administration is currently considering increases in Pell Grants. which I think will be, highly desirable if it happens. But also one of the things that the new Beach 2030 model has is how can we increase revenue to the university so that we can spend it on good things like subsidizing or paying for, ideally, fees like that. And it's a new way of thinking, because in the CSU, we've sort of been used to, well, the state gives us money and we spend it on the good things we spend it on, and that's where it ends. But, I would love you, say, Lydiana or me, to go out to industry and say, hey, who's teaching your students or your children or your nieces and nephews? Well, it's our students and they need $900, so please write a check.
Mm-hmm.
And, fundraising or public awareness of these kinds of barriers that I think are not intentional, but perhaps they are. I mean, depends how suspicious you want to be, but I think they're not intentional, and we would love to do away with it. So I love that. So you should feel empowered to kind of bring these issues up and help us solve them. Nat, what about you? Advice for me, advice for the university?
Yeah, I think, we as faculty have learned so much in this past year about the inequities. So I think we can do better. And I think one of the ways that faculty and instructors can do better is really giving us tools and training and professional development about how we can continue to be, really increase our self-awareness, our self-examination, especially in areas of implicit bias, anti-racism. And I think all of those conversations and those dialogues, those spaces have to happen across all disciplines, departments, and colleges. And I think people tend to shy away from those conversations when they feel a sense of discomfort or they feel like they lack the knowledge. So they don't have the courage to open up those conversations. But, from what I've seen, our students are really dealing with these issues. And me as a person of color, I'm dealing with the surge of anti-Asian hate and violence. So I would like to see that more pervasive across our university. I think also be related to all this around, the Black Lives Matter. And I see this need for more counselors, more MFTs who look like, our students, more Black, therapists and counselors, more Latinx counselors and therapists.
And absolutely, two things come to mind just immediately. Yesterday, we were doing our intergroup dialogue session with the Senate Executive Committee, and we were discussing how is the Senate structured and is it structurally racist? And, again, these kinds of deep discussions about the structure of our university, I think, need to be examined, addressed, and ideally rectified going forward. And that doesn't mean that's not necessarily an easy task. It will take all of us working very hard to look at ourselves and our university to do that. And then the second issue of, what's happening in our society and how we can respond to that and actively engage. So, for too long, as I think we higher education have sat back and said, well, there just aren't any people out there. We'll just have to wait for them to come to us. And, if we say we create the future PhDs, we create the future faculty, let's be intentional about finding the right students, educating them in the excellent way we do, sending them off to get PhDs. Of course, your college can do it yourself, and then bring them back. And just, you should know that it's brand new, but we have just joined a pilot, it's actually led by us, Cal State Long Beach, to expand the CDIP program so that we're bringing in more people from across all the fields at the university to the CSU. And so I'm pretty excited about that. But, you know, again, somebody said yesterday, let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Was that Voltaire, was it? And what Norbert said when he heard that was, well, see, there's still some use for the Enlightenment. But you know, if we all do little steps, if we all commit to small amounts of self-evaluation and self-development, then the ant-heap of our society will grow bigger and better. So I think it's actually a very optimistic and maybe American thing that we're saying. We do have the power to change, and we need to, and we will. So that's really good. Well, sort of we've as expected, with such a deep intellectual bench here, as it were, we've discussed really difficult and challenging and exciting and optimistic things, in addition to sort of depressing and striking things. But let's just go to the personal. What fun things have you done in the last year to keep yourselves healthy? And I think one of you brought it up before. Our students need to spend time keeping themselves healthy, taking breaks, whatever it takes, walks. What have you done? Lydiana, what have you done? Hobbies, interests, new things, old things?
I think that it's just been a really nice reminder to pause and live a little bit more in the moment. I have 2 young kids. So for me—
How old are they?
They're 1 and 5, soon to be 2.
Oh my goodness, boy.
Yeah. So, you know, there's been no sourdough baking bread in my life this past year, but, you know, it's been really nice to be able to spend, you know, because their daycare's closed, their school's closed. And so, you know, at our house, it was that juggle of trying to balance full-time work with full-time childcare. And we also had to figure out ways to keep them busy, which meant that we, you know, took more walks around the neighborhood, got to know our neighbors, found out which one of our neighbors planted milkweed plants, and we watched the caterpillars and then the chrysalis and then the monarch butterflies. I never would have stopped to just enjoy that if the whole world hadn't been put on pause. So I think far into the future, I'm going to look back, as hectic as this year's been, I'm going to look back on this year with a lot of fondness.
Fascinating. That's great. And you know what's interesting about this is that work used to be like that. I mean, back before the Industrial Revolution, work was at home. Nobody went out to work. And we've become so used to the idea that work is work and home is home, and that never the twain shall meet. And we've sort of had a very immediate thing. Well, hey, wait, how do we combine our whole lives? And boy, it's tough. Don't get me wrong. And you know, take my hat off to you, Lydiana. 2 young kids at home, boy, and doing your full-time job, not easy. But it does come with benefits, so that's great. So, how about you, Stacey?
I have taken up Pilates and meditation.
Fabulous.
And I do that 5 to 6 days a week. And I'm not sure how loud it is, but my husband and I are having a complete kitchen and bathroom remodel done.
Oh, okay. So you're planning to do something relaxing during the COVID time.
It's quite loud here right now.
We can't hear anything.
Okay, good. And there, of course, were issues with permits and whatnot. So we have not had a stove or a downstairs restroom since January. So I'm just working on being the positive person in our partnership. And, you know, like we have a grill and a hot plate and a fridge, and I'm making the best of this time. It's nice to have my husband working from home as well. So
yeah,
I'm looking at all the silver linings that I can.
Well, that's great, but boy, having a kitchen and bathroom remodel in the most auspicious times are tough things, and so I can only imagine. But if you ever need to scream, you can come into my office in Brockman and just scream as loudly as you want. No one will hear you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I might.
Okay. Well, it's a genuine offer. Jonathan, how about you?
It's kind of disturbing. People can scream in your office and not hear it. But I would say in one word.
You, right? Yeah.
In one word, and it took me all my life to get to this point, 53 years, yoga. Amazing.
Okay.
So I really had never tried it before. And so doing it online, have an online instructor, and it's not perfect yet, but I look forward to being able to do it like in a studio when it's, more people can get together. But I have just been really transformed by it. Really an opportunity to just not think about things. And it's just wonderful.
Fantastic. It's kind of mind, body, soul. And okay, folks, you heard it here first from Jonathan, yoga. How about you, Gail?
I've been trying to enjoy just living in the moment. And last November, we adopted a abandoned kitten. So that's been kind of fun to take our minds off other things and keep us from getting too focused on serious things. So been just enjoying taking things slow, having the opportunity, like Lydia said, to walk around the neighborhood, get to know neighbors that you might not encounter before.
Well, yeah, living in the moment, you can't beat that. And what good advice. Thank you. Nat?
Those that know me well, I have embraced my inner child and I began roller skating. I'm a former rollerblader, but I've converted my daughters, my husband, my best friends, and so converted my family room into a mini roller skate rink. And so, yeah, it's been really helpful. If I know I have back-to-back classes, I'll put on my skates, do a loop through the neighborhood, come back. And so it's been really good. I love it a lot. Lots of falls, very humbling, but really good exercise and great form of, mental health too.
Yeah, that's what I'm taking from you. Exercise really good. I totally agree. I can guarantee you if I got on roller skates, I would be dead in 20 seconds. I have a funny story about ice skating to tell you. I was visiting England when I was young and from South Africa, and South Africa has no ice or snow. And a friend in England said, "Oh, have you ever ice skated?" And I said, "Sure." And of course I hadn't. And she said, "Well, put on your skates, let's go skating." So I put on skates and I thought, well, how hard can this be? And got into the ice, and she grabbed my arm and started going around at about 100 miles an hour. It turned out she was an expert skater. And I just closed my eyes and held on for a few seconds, and then I just fell. And I had to admit, I haven't really done this before. But anyway, that's my memory of ice skating. But yeah, I think really what you've all said is so amazing and so wise. And I hope the students and the faculty and the staff and anyone who watches these will just have confirmed what outstanding faculty we have in the College of Education, of which you are all fabulous examples. And we're a community together in spite of our arguments, our differences, our discussions, which sometimes come to the fore. But we're all for you, the students, and we're so lucky and privileged to be able to be in the positions we are, and that we interact with our students and our colleagues. So thanks so much for taking the time to spend with us. I loved the conversation, and we'll look forward to more.